He rejected his ex and their child as liars, until a doctor read one name and froze in fear. The doctor's hands trembled as he stared at the birth certificate, his face draining of all color as he whispered a name that would destroy 3 generations of carefully constructed lies. Dr. Helena Morrison had seen every type of family drama unfold in her 30 years as head of pediatric genetics at St. Catherine's Medical Center in Manhattan. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for the moment when 23-year-old Amara Bennett walked through her office door, clutching a 4-year-old boy's hand and an envelope marked Confidential Medical Records. Amara's dark eyes held the kind of exhaustion that went beyond sleepless nights. It was the weariness of a woman who'd fought every battle alone and lost more than she'd won. Her natural hair was pulled back in a simple bun, and despite the designer handbag on her shoulder, a remnant from a different life, her clothes told the story of someone stretching every dollar. Dr. Morrison. Amara's voice cracked slightly. Thank you for seeing us on such short notice. This is my son, Isaiah. The little boy looked up at Dr. Morrison with curious eyes that seemed far too knowing for his age. There was something striking about his features, an almost aristocratic quality that seemed at odds with the second-hand clothes he wore. Please, sit down. Dr. Morrison gestured to the chairs across from her desk. Your message said this was urgent, something about paternity documentation. Before Amara could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her entire body tensed. The name on the screen made her hands shake. Maxwell Cole. Do not answer. Doctor. Morrison noticed 30 years of reading families had taught her that sometimes the most important information came from what people didn't say. Ms. Bennett, are you all right? Amara silenced the phone and took a deep breath. I need your help proving something that should never have needed proof. 4 years ago, I was told I was a liar, that my son was a liar by extension, that we were trying to trap a powerful man with false claims. Her voice hardened. But science doesn't lie, Dr. Morrison. DNA doesn't lie, and I need you to help me show the world what one man's family tried to bury. If you're listening to this and want more stories like these, stories about women who refused to be silenced, who fought for truth against impossible odds, please follow this channel, because Amara's story is just beginning, and what she's about to uncover will shake the foundations of one of New York's most powerful families. Dr. Morrison leaned forward, her professional instincts tingling. What exactly are we talking about here, Miss Bennett? Maxwell Cole, Amara said, the name like a curse. Billionaire, philanthropist, the man plastered on every charity gala invitation in this city. 4 years ago, he was my boyfriend. He was the man who said he loved me, who promised me a future, until I got pregnant, and suddenly I became inconvenient. Isaiah tugged at his mother's sleeve. Mama, can I color? Amara pulled out a coloring book and crayons from her bag, with the practiced efficiency of a single mother who'd learned to be prepared for anything. As Isaiah settled into a corner of the office, she continued, When I told Maxwell I was pregnant, he smiled. He held me and said we'd figure it out together. 3 days later, his mother showed up at my apartment. Amara's jaw clenched. Victoria Cole. Old money. Older prejudices. She offered me $500,000 to take care of the problem or disappear. When I refused, she told me that no court would ever believe that her son, a Cole, would have touched someone like me. Dr. Morrison had heard versions of this story before, but something about Amara's controlled fury suggested this went deeper than a simple paternity dispute. I tried to reach Maxwell, but he'd blocked my number. His security wouldn't let me near his building. So I did what any terrified 20-year-old would do. I had my baby alone, raised him alone, and tried to build a life for us. Amara pulled out a folder. But last week, everything changed. Isaiah got sick. really sick. The doctor said he needed a bone marrow transplant, and I'm not a match. They said his best chance was biological family. So, you reached out to the father, Dr. Morrison concluded. I tried, and this time, Victoria Cole didn't just threaten me. She had her lawyers send a letter claiming that I had already been paid for my fraudulent allegations and that any further contact would result in legal action for harassment and extortion. Amara's hands trembled as she opened the folder. But here's what she doesn't know. Before Isaiah was born, I did a private paternity test. I had a friend who worked in a lab, and she helped me process it under the table. I've had proof for 4 years. Dr. Morrison. I just never used it because I was terrified of what the Coles could do to me. Dr. Morrison examined the documents Amara laid out. The paternity test results were clear. 99.97% probability that Maxwell Cole was Isaiah's father. Why come to me now, if you have proof? Because the Coles have power, money, lawyers who could argue that my friend's lab wasn't certified, that the chain of custody was compromised, that I somehow fabricated everything. Amara leaned forward. But you, Dr. Morrison, you're head of genetics at one of the most respected hospitals in the country. If you run a new test, supervised and documented, they can't dismiss it. They can't dismiss my son's life. Dr. Morrison looked at the little boy coloring peacefully in the corner. And his condition, the need for a transplant. Isaiah has acute myeloid leukemia. He was diagnosed 3 weeks ago. Without a transplant, the doctors give him 6 months, maybe less. The weight of that statement hung in the air between them. This wasn't just about money or acknowledgement anymore. This was about survival. I'll run the test, Dr. Morrison said finally. But Miss Bennett, you need to understand that if this is who I think it is, you're about to go to war with one of the most powerful families in New York. They will come at you with everything they have. Let them come. Amara's voice was steel. I've already lost everything that mattered except my son. I've been poor, powerless, and invisible for 4 years. I have nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Dr. Morrison stood. Then let's begin. I'll need samples from Isaiah and from you for baseline. As for Maxwell Cole, do you have any way to obtain a sample from him? Amara's smile was grim. I don't need to, because what Victoria Cole doesn't know is that I've been planning this for longer than last week. I have something that will force Maxwell to submit to testing. Something his mother tried very hard to make me forget about. What's that? The night I told Maxwell I was pregnant, before his mother poisoned him against me, he wrote me a letter. A promise, really. He said if I ever needed anything, he would be there. He signed it, dated it, and gave me explicit written permission to contact him about the child. Amara pulled out a carefully preserved envelope. His mother said I was a liar. His lawyers said I was an extortionist. But this letter, in his own hand, proves that Maxwell Cole acknowledged this pregnancy, which means he knew he was potentially a father and abandoned his child anyway. Dr. Morrison took the letter carefully. The handwriting was distinctive, clearly masculine, and the signature matched examples of Maxwell Cole's autograph she'd seen on charity pledges displayed in the hospital's donor wing. This is powerful, Doctor. Morrison admitted, but it's not DNA evidence. No, Amara agreed, but it's proof of knowledge and intent. And combined with the paternity test you're about to run, it's enough to destroy the Cole family's carefully crafted public image. Maxwell Cole, humanitarian philanthropist, abandoned his own dying child. She met Dr. Morrison's eyes. I don't want to destroy him. I just want him to save Isaiah's life. But if he refuses, then yes, I will burn his reputation to the ground. Dr. Morrison made her decision. Come back tomorrow morning. I'll have the legal team prepare the documentation for a court-ordered test if necessary. In the meantime, I want to run preliminary genetic screening on Isaiah to understand exactly what we're dealing with. As Amara gathered Isaiah's coloring supplies, Dr. Morrison noticed the boy had been drawing a family, a mother, a child, and a shadowy figure standing apart from them. Isaiah, honey, who's that? Dr. Morrison pointed to the separate figure. Isaiah looked up with those two wise eyes. That's the man Mama cries about when she thinks I'm sleeping. She says he's supposed to love us but doesn't know how. The simple, devastating truth of a child's observation hung in the air. After Amara and Isaiah left, Dr. Morrison sat at her desk and pulled up everything she could find on Maxwell Cole. The man was a legend in business circles, 38 years old, heir to the coal industry's fortune, personally worth an estimated $12 billion. His face smiled from dozens of charity galas, always with a beautiful woman on his arm. None of them lasted more than a few months. But it was Victoria Cole who truly caught Dr. Morrison's attention. The matriarch of the Cole family was known for her ruthlessness in business and her obsessive protection of the family legacy. She'd destroyed careers, ruined reputations, and crushed anyone who threatened the Cole name. And Amara Bennett, a young black woman with no family money and no powerful connections, was about to challenge her directly. Dr. Morrison's phone rang. It was her colleague, Dr. James Whitmore, from the hospital's legal department. Helena, I just got a very interesting call from Victoria Cole's personal attorney, he said without preamble. Apparently, there's a rumor that someone is making paternity claims against Maxwell Cole, and they want to preemptively block any testing conducted at this hospital. On what grounds? Dr. Morrison kept her voice neutral. Harassment, fraud. They're claiming the alleged mother is a known scam artist who's already been compensated for dropping previous false claims. And do they have proof of these allegations? There was a pause. That's the thing, Helena. They have a non-disclosure agreement signed by an A.N. Bennett 4 years ago, along with a payment record of $500,000. Dr. Morrison's blood ran cold. Send me everything. Now, 10 minutes later, she was staring at a document that made her sick to her stomach. It was indeed signed by an A. Bennett and dated 4 years ago, right around when Amara would have been pregnant. The NDA specifically prohibited any public claims of paternity and any attempts to contact the Cole family. But something was wrong. The signature looked nothing like the signature on the documents Amara had shown her today. And the payment receipt listed a bank account in the Cayman Islands. Not exactly the kind of account a struggling young woman would have. Dr. Morrison had seen enough forged documents in medical malpractice cases to recognize the signs. This wasn't just sloppy, it was fraudulent. Someone had created a paper trail to discredit Amara before she could ever make her case. The question was, how far would the Coles go to protect their lie? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dr. Morrison, this is Amara Bennett. Please check the news. Something's happened. They're saying... The message cut off. Dr. Morrison turned on the television in her office. The breaking news banner made her heart stop. Breaking, Maxwell Cole announces engagement to Senator's daughter. Wedding planned for this summer. The camera showed Maxwell Cole, devastatingly handsome in a tailored suit, his arm around a blonde woman dripping in diamonds. Victoria Cole stood beside them, beaming like she'd just won the lottery. The reporter's voice was breathless with excitement. In a surprise announcement at the Coal Industries annual gala tonight, Maxwell Cole revealed his engagement to Amanda Worthington, daughter of Senator Charles Worthington. The couple plans to marry in June at the Cole family estate in the Hamptons. Dr. Morrison's phone rang again. This time it was Amara, and her voice was raw with emotion. Did you see? He's getting married. He's going to stand up in front of the world and promise himself to another woman while his son is dying. There was a long pause. Dr. Morrison, I need that test done as soon as possible. Because if Maxwell Cole thinks he can erase us by building a new life, he's about to learn that some truths can't be buried. Amara, listen to me carefully. The Coles have created forged documents suggesting you already took money and signed an NDA. They're building a defense before you even attack. Let them. Amara's voice was harder than stone. I kept every text, every email, every voicemail from before Victoria Cole poisoned Maxwell against me. I have proof that the man who's about to marry a senator's daughter knew he had a child and chose to pretend we didn't exist. And now that child is dying. Dr. Morrison made a decision that would change all their lives. Bring Isaiah in tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'm going to run every test we can, and I'm going to document everything so thoroughly that even Victoria Cole's army of lawyers can't make it disappear. But Amara, you need to be prepared. When we prove Maxwell is Isaiah's father, this is going to explode. The media, the public attention, the pressure. I've been invisible for 4 years, Dr. Morrison. Maybe it's time someone finally saw us. After they hung up, Dr. Morrison sat in the darkness of her office, staring at the image of Maxwell Cole and his fiancée frozen on the television screen. She thought about Amara's strength, Isaiah's innocent eyes, and the monumental battle about to unfold. But what Dr. Morrison didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that Maxwell Cole himself had no idea about the forged documents his mother had created. He'd believed Victoria when she told him Amara had taken the money and disappeared. He'd convinced himself that his mother's actions had been a mercy, saving him from a woman who'd tried to trap him with a pregnancy, and he had no idea that in exactly 12 hours, when Dr. Morrison ran the genetic tests on Isaiah Bennett, the results would reveal something that went far beyond simple paternity, something that would unravel not just Maxwell's carefully planned future, but the entire foundation of the Cole family legacy. Because Isaiah's DNA held a secret that Victoria Cole had spent millions to bury, a secret connected to a scandal from 30 years ago, a missing heir, and a blood connection that would prove the Coles had been living a lie for 3 decades. The truth was about to detonate, and no amount of money or power could stop it. But first, someone would have to survive long enough to tell it. The next morning, Amara sat in Dr. Morrison's office while Isaiah had his blood drawn by the hospital's most experienced pediatric nurse. The boy was brave, barely flinching, and Amara's heart broke watching him endure yet another needle with the resigned patience of a child who'd had too many. "He's incredibly resilient," Dr. Morrison observed, entering with a tablet full of consent forms. "I'm going to be direct with you, Amara. The genetic panel I'm running isn't just for paternity. Given Isaiah's condition, I want to screen for any hereditary factors that might affect his treatment. That means we'll be looking at his entire genetic profile. Will that show anything about Maxwell's family history? It might show markers that could only come from a specific bloodline. Why? Is there something you're not telling me?" Amara hesitated, then made a decision. "There's a reason Victoria Cole reacted so violently when I told Maxwell I was pregnant. I thought it was just racism at first. Rich white family doesn't want a black woman's baby muddying their perfect lineage. But something Maxwell said once, before everything fell apart, stuck with me." "What did he say?" "We were lying in bed, talking about the future. I asked him about having kids someday, and he got this strange look on his face. He said, 'My mother has very specific ideas about who should carry on the Cole name. She's obsessed with bloodlines, genetic legacy. She made my brother take a full genetic screening before he was allowed to get married.'" Dr. Morrison's professional interest was piqued. "Did he elaborate?" "Not really. But later, when Victoria showed up at my apartment and offered me money to disappear, she said something I've never forgotten. She said, 'The Cole bloodline is pure. and we intend to keep it that way. Your child would contaminate something that's been carefully preserved for generations. That's horrific, Dr. Morrison said flatly. At the time, I thought she just meant she didn't want mixed-race grandchildren. But the way she said, carefully preserved, it sounded like more than just racism. It sounded like there was something specific they were trying to protect or hide. Dr. Morrison made a note. Well, the genetic screening will tell us if there are any unusual markers. Sometimes wealthy families with a history of intermarriage have specific genetic signatures. What neither woman could have known was that in a penthouse office across town, Victoria Cole was having a very different conversation about genetic legacies. "Mother, this is insane." Maxwell Cole paced his mother's opulent sitting room, the morning sun glinting off the crystal chandeliers. "You're telling me that woman is back, making claims about a child after 4 years?" Victoria sat perfectly poised in an antique chair, her silver hair immaculate, her expression carved from ice. "That woman has a name, Maxwell, Amara Bennett. And yes, she's apparently decided that your engagement is the perfect time to resurrect her fraudulent paternity claims. But we paid her off. You said she took the money and signed the papers. She did." Victoria's voice was smooth as silk, "which is why our lawyers are already preparing harassment charges. This will be handled quietly, efficiently, and without impacting your wedding." Maxwell stopped pacing. He was a handsome man, tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of effortless confidence that came from never having to doubt his place in the world. But something in his mother's tone made him uneasy. "Mother, was I really that careless? I mean, we were together, but I always—" "Details don't matter now," Victoria interrupted. "What matters is protecting the Cole name. You're about to marry into one of the most powerful political families in the country. Senator Worthington is positioning himself for a presidential run. Your marriage to Amanda isn't just personal, it's strategic. We cannot have some gold digger threatening everything we've built." But Maxwell's mind was drifting back to 4 years ago, to late nights with Amara, to the way she'd made him laugh, to the genuine warmth he'd felt in her presence. She'd never seemed like a gold digger. In fact, she'd refused gifts, insisted on paying for her own meals, and had been genuinely uncomfortable when he took her to expensive restaurants. "Mother, what if—" "No!" Victoria's voice cracked like a whip. "There is no what if. I handled this situation appropriately 4 years ago, and I'll handle it again now. You will focus on your engagement, your wedding, and your future. The Bennett woman is not your problem. But if there really is a child, there is no child that matters to this family." Victoria stood, her eyes cold. "Maxwell, you need to understand something. The Cole legacy is bigger than any individual want or desire. Your great-grandfather built this empire from nothing. Your grandfather expanded it into the global powerhouse it is today. Your father and I have spent our lives preserving and protecting what we've built, and you will not throw that away for some woman who spread her legs and thought she won the lottery." The crude language was shocking coming from his usually refined mother, and Maxwell felt a flash of anger. But before he could respond, Victoria softened her approach. "Darling, I know you have a good heart. It's one of the things I love about you. But that good heart makes you vulnerable to manipulation. Women like Amara Bennett see a Cole and see dollar signs. Nothing more." She touched his face gently. "Trust me to protect you. It's what I've always done." And because Maxwell had spent 38 years trusting his mother's judgment, because he'd never had reason to doubt her love or her guidance, he nodded. What Maxwell didn't know was that Victoria had just received a call from her private investigator, the same man who'd helped create the forged documents 4 years ago, and the news he'd delivered had made even Victoria's iron composure crack. "Doctor, Helena Morrison was running genetic tests on a child claiming to be Maxwell's son, And those tests, if completed, would reveal more than just paternity. They would reveal a genetic marker that should have been impossible, a marker that connected Isaiah Bennett to a bloodline everyone believed had ended 30 years ago. The bloodline of Victoria's first husband, the man she'd been married to before she became a Cole, the man who died under mysterious circumstances, leaving her to marry into the Cole fortune within 6 months. The man whose death had never been properly investigated because Victoria had made sure all the right people were paid off. Back at St. Catherine's, Dr. Morrison was studying preliminary blood work from Isaiah when something caught her attention. She pulled up her computer and ran a comparison against standard genetic databases. "That's odd," she muttered. Her assistant, Dr. Patel, leaned over. "Kutka, what is it?" "This child has a genetic marker that's extremely rare. It's associated with a specific European bloodline, practically aristocratic. You only see it in families with extensive genealogical records. Could it be from the father's side? That's what I'm trying to determine. But the thing is, this particular marker is so rare that there are only a few documented cases in the United States. Let me check something." Dr. Morrison pulled up an old file, something she remembered from a genetics conference years ago. A case study about a wealthy New York family with a unique genetic signature. When the name popped up, she felt her blood freeze. "Oh my God," she whispered. What is it?" "This marker. It's not from the Cole family line. It's from the Rothmore family. And according to this, the last documented Rothmore heir died 30 years ago in a car accident." Dr. Morrison looked up at her assistant, her face pale. "But if Isaiah has this marker, it means he's directly descended from that bloodline. Which means the Rothmore heir didn't die," Dr. Patel finished. "Or someone's been hiding a surviving bloodline for 3 decades. Dr. Morrison immediately called Amara. "Oh, I need you to tell me everything you know about Maxwell's family history, specifically anything about his mother's side of the family." Amara, feeding Isaiah lunch in the hospital cafeteria, frowned. "I don't know much. Maxwell didn't talk about his mother's past very often." "Why?" "Because Isaiah's genetic screening shows something impossible, a bloodline marker that shouldn't exist." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Amara said slowly, "There was one thing. I didn't think it mattered at the time, but Maxwell once mentioned that his mother changed her name when she married his father, that she'd been married before, but her first husband died young, and she never talked about him. Do you remember the first husband's name?" "No, but Maxwell said something strange. He said his mother told him that her first marriage was a mistake, that the man she'd married came from old European blood, but was a drunk who died in a car crash. And then she said—" Amara paused, trying to remember. She said something like, "Some bloodlines are better off ending." Dr. Morrison's hands were shaking as she pulled up archived newspaper articles from 30 years ago. And there it was. Rothmore heir killed in tragic accident, family fortune left without direct descendant. The article described how 28-year-old Alexander Rothmore had died in a single-car crash in upstate New York. He left behind a young wife, Victoria, and no children. The Rothmore fortune, estimated at over $3 billion at the time, had been distributed to distant cousins and charitable foundations. But the accompanying photo made Dr. Morrison's heart stop, because standing beside the grieving Victoria Rothmore, his hand comfortingly on her shoulder, was a younger version of a man Dr. Morrison recognized, James Cole, Maxwell's father. The implications were staggering. What if Alexander Rothmore hadn't died in an accident? What if his death had been arranged? What if Victoria had been pregnant when he died, but had hidden the child? Or worse, what if that child had been raised as someone else? Doctor. Morrison's mind was racing through possibilities when her phone buzzed with an urgent alert from hospital security. Dr. Morrison, you have visitors. Victoria Cole and her legal team are demanding to speak with you immediately. Tell them I'm with a patient. They say they have a court order to stop any genetic testing on a minor child without paternal consent. Dr. Morrison looked at the preliminary results still loading on her screen. She had maybe 5 minutes before Victoria's lawyers burst into her office. She made a split-second decision and called Amara. Listen to me very carefully. I'm sending you encrypted files right now. Download them to your phone and then delete the email. Do not open them yet. If anything happens to me, if the Coles succeed in shutting down this testing, these files will prove everything. What's going on? I'm about to find out just how far Victoria Cole will go to bury the truth. But Amara, whatever happens next, you need to know. Isaiah's DNA proves something that goes way beyond paternity. It proves that Victoria Cole has been hiding a secret for 30 years. A secret that could cost her everything. The office door burst open, and Victoria Cole swept in like an avenging angel, flanked by 3 lawyers in $1,000 suits. Dr. Morrison, Victoria's voice was venomous honey. I believe you have something that belongs to my family. Dr. Morrison stood her ground. I have a patient who needs medical care. His mother has granted full consent for treatment and testing. His mother, Victoria sneered, is a fraud and a liar. And you are about to be sued for medical malpractice if you don't hand over every sample, every test result, and every record related to this alleged child. I don't respond to threats, Mrs. Cole. Then perhaps you'll respond to this? One of the lawyers slapped a document on Dr. Morrison's desk. A court injunction prohibiting any genetic testing without proven paternal consent. Since Maxwell Cole denies paternity and has not consented to testing, any samples you have are obtained under fraudulent pretenses. Dr. Morrison glanced at the injunction. It was real, signed by a judge she knew had connections to the Cole family. This injunction is invalid, Dr. Morrison said calmly. The testing is being conducted for medical treatment purposes, not paternity determination. A child with leukemia has a right to genetic screening for treatment planning. Then you'll have no objection to destroying any results that pertain to paternity. Victoria's lawyer countered. I can't destroy medical records. That's illegal. What's illegal? Victoria finally spoke, stepping closer. Is defaming my family with false accusations. What's illegal is using a dying child as leverage for a shakedown. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Dr. Morrison. Actually, Dr. Morrison met her eyes steadily. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with a woman who forged documents to frame an innocent young mother. I'm dealing with a woman who's so desperate to hide the truth that she's willing to let her own grandson die rather than admit he exists. That child is not my grandson. Then you won't mind if we prove that definitively with a court-supervised paternity test. Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, and Dr. Morrison saw raw fear beneath the ice. You have no idea what you're meddling with. Some truths are buried for good reasons. Is that a confession, Mrs. Cole? Because it sounds like you're admitting there's a truth you don't want revealed. One of the lawyers stepped forward. Dr. Morrison, we're prepared to offer you a very generous settlement in exchange for your cooperation. $1 million transferred immediately to your account if you simply agree that this testing was conducted in error and all samples have been contaminated. It was a bribe. A blatant, illegal bribe offered in front of witnesses as if money could buy anything. Get out of my office, Dr. Morrison said quietly. I'm sorry. Get out! Dr. Morrison's voice cracked like thunder. You come into my hospital, threaten a dying child's treatment, and offer me a bribe to commit medical fraud. Get out before I call security and the police. Victoria's eyes narrowed. You're making a grave mistake, Dr. Morrison. The Cole family has friends in every level of this city's government. By tomorrow, you could lose your medical license. By next week, this hospital could lose its accreditation. And by next month, you could be facing criminal charges for fraud and extortion. Then I guess I better make sure I document everything very, very thoroughly. Dr. Morrison hit a button on her desk. Security, please escort Mrs. Cole and her associates from the building. As the security team arrived, Victoria leaned close and whispered something that made Dr. Morrison's blood run cold. My first husband thought he was smarter than me too. He thought he could expose my secrets, threaten my future. Look where that got him. It was as close to a confession of murder as Dr. Morrison had ever heard. After they left, Dr. Morrison sat down heavily, her hands shaking. She pulled up the encrypted file she'd sent to Amara and added one more document, a video recording of Victoria's visit, captured by the security camera hidden in her office bookshelf. Then she returned to the genetic results, still loading on her screen. When the final analysis appeared, she had to read it 3 times to believe what she was seeing. Isaiah Bennett was indeed Maxwell Cole's biological son, but he was also directly descended from the Rothmore bloodline through a genetic marker that could only be passed down through one specific connection. And that meant that Victoria Cole had been pregnant when her first husband died. She'd hidden the pregnancy, given birth in secret, and then, given the child up for adoption, hidden him away. Or had she done something far worse? Doctor Morrison cross-referenced birth records from 30 years ago, looking for any Cole family births within a year of Alexander Rothmore's death. And there it was, Maxwell James Cole, born 7 months after Alexander Rothmore's fatal car crash. Listed father James Cole, listed mother Victoria Rothmore Cole. But if Victoria had been pregnant when Alexander died, and if Maxwell was born only 7 months later, then either Maxwell was premature, or he was conceived before Victoria's first husband died, which meant Maxwell Cole wasn't genetically a Cole at all. He was a Rothmore, and if that truth came out, it would invalidate 30 years of inheritance, corporate control, and family legacy. The coal industry's fortune was protected by bloodline provisions in the original trust. If Maxwell wasn't James Cole's biological son, he had no legal claim to the empire he currently controlled. Dr. Morrison realized with dawning horror that Victoria Cole wasn't just protecting family reputation. She was protecting billions of dollars and an empire built on a lie. And she'd already killed once to keep that lie buried. The question was, how many more people would die before the truth came out? Dr. Morrison's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Dr. Morrison, this is James Whitmore from Legal. I need to see you immediately. Privately. And I think you should bring any evidence you have to a very safe location. Victoria Cole just had a meeting with the hospital board. They're voting tonight on whether to suspend your privileges pending an ethics investigation. The war had begun, and the first casualty would be anyone who stood between Victoria Cole and her secrets. Amara sat in the small apartment she shared with Isaiah, staring at the encrypted files Dr. Morrison had sent her. She hadn't opened them yet, partly because she was terrified of what they'd reveal, partly because Isaiah was finally sleeping peacefully after a difficult afternoon of nausea from his medication. Her phone buzzed. It was a news alert. Esther Catherine's Hospital suspends lead geneticist pending ethics review. Amara's stomach dropped. They'd gone after Dr. Morrison, which meant the Coles knew about the testing, knew about the results, and were moving to bury everything. Before she could process this, her door buzzer rang. It was nearly midnight. Who would visit at this hour? She checked the security camera feed on her phone, and her heart stopped. Maxwell Cole stood outside her building, alone, his hands shoved in his pockets, looking more uncertain than she'd ever seen him. Amara's first instinct was to ignore him, to let him stand there in the cold. But something in his posture, the way his shoulders were hunched, the way he kept looking around as if expecting someone to stop him, made her press the intercom. "What do you want, Maxwell?" His head snapped up, and even through the grainy camera, she could see the pain in his eyes. "Amara, please, I need to talk to you. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. You had 4 years to talk to me. I know I failed you, failed him. But I just learned something tonight that made me realize, God, Amara, I think my mother's been lying to me about everything." Despite herself, despite 4 years of hurt and anger, Amara buzzed him in. She met him at her apartment door with her arms crossed, her expression guarded. Maxwell looked around the tiny apartment, so different from the luxury he'd always known, and something in his face crumbled. "You've been raising our son here, alone. His name is Isaiah, and yes, I raised him here, alone, because your mother told me I wasn't good enough to be part of your world. She told me you took money and disappeared. She showed me documents, a signed NDA, proof that you'd been paid off." Maxwell ran his hands through his hair. "I believed her. God help me, I believed every word." "Why would you believe I'd do that? You knew me, Maxwell. You knew I loved you. Because it was easier," Maxwell admitted, his voice breaking. "Because believing you'd taken the money meant I didn't have to face what a coward I was. Didn't have to admit that I let my mother control my life, destroy my relationship, and erase my own child." Amara felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Why are you here now? Your engagement was just announced. You're getting married in 6 months, because I saw the hospital security footage. My mother has contacts everywhere, and someone sent her a video of her visit to Dr. Morrison today. I watched my mother threaten a doctor, offer bribes, and then—" Maxwell's voice dropped to a whisper. She said something about her first husband, about how he thought he was smarter than her, and it got him killed. Amara's blood ran cold. She admitted to murder, as close as anyone ever will without an actual confession, and suddenly I started questioning everything, every story she'd told me about you, about the past, about our family. Maxwell stepped closer. "Amara, I need to know the truth. Is there really a child, my child? You want proof?" Amara's voice was hard. "Fine." She walked to Isaiah's bedroom door and opened it quietly. Maxwell followed and stood in the doorway, looking down at the sleeping 4-year-old boy. Even in sleep, the resemblance was undeniable. Isaiah had Maxwell's strong jawline, his distinctive nose, the same curl pattern to his hair, but he also had Amara's deep skin tone, her full lips, her high cheekbones. "Oh my God," Maxwell breathed. He's beautiful. His name is Isaiah. He's 4 years old. His favorite color is blue. He loves dinosaurs and building blocks and listening to me read stories before bed." Amara's voice cracked. "And he's dying. Maxwell. He has leukemia, and he needs a bone marrow transplant, and I'm not a match." Maxwell's knees nearly buckled. He reached out to steady himself against the doorframe. "Dying. My son is dying. Your son has been alive for 4 years, and you didn't care. Now that he's dying, suddenly you want to acknowledge him." "I didn't know." Maxwell's voice rose, then dropped when Isaiah stirred. "I swear to God, Amara, I didn't know. If I had known the truth, if I had known about him, you would have what? Stood up to your mother, chosen us over your family's money." Amara shook her head bitterly. "You made your choice 4 years ago when you blocked my number and refused to see me. I was a coward. I was wrong. And if I could go back and change it, I would." Maxwell looked at her with tears in his eyes. "But I can't. All I can do is try to make it right now. Starting with that transplant. I'll get tested immediately. And if I'm not a match, I'll find someone who is. I'll use every resource I have. Why should I believe you? Your mother will never let you help us. Then I'll go to war with my mother. Maxwell's voice was steel. Doctor, Morrison ran genetic tests, didn't she? That's what set all this off. What did they show? Amara hesitated, then made a decision. She pulled out her phone and opened the encrypted files Dr. Morrison had sent. I haven't looked at these yet. She sent them right before your mother got her suspended. She said they proved something that went beyond paternity. They sat at Amara's small kitchen table and opened the files together. As they read, both of their faces went pale. "This is impossible," Maxwell whispered. "This says I'm not genetically a Cole, that I carry the Rothmore bloodline marker. But it would mean your mother was pregnant with her first husband's child when he died." Amara finished. "It would mean you're not James Cole's biological son." Maxwell's world was spinning. Everything he'd believed about his identity, his inheritance, his place in the world, all of it built on a lie. "There's more." Amara pointed to another document. Dr. Morrison cross-referenced the genetic markers with medical databases. "Maxwell, your biological father didn't just die in a car crash. He had a life insurance policy that paid out triple for accidental death. Your mother collected $9 million. $9 million that she used to buy her way into the Cole family," Maxwell said numbly. "My father, James Cole, was struggling financially at the time. His company was on the verge of bankruptcy. Then suddenly, my mother appears with cash to invest. They get married within 6 months, and Cole Industries becomes an empire. She didn't just marry into money. She bought her way in with blood money from a husband she murdered." They sat in silence, processing the enormity of what they'd uncovered. Then Maxwell said, "If this comes out, I lose everything. Not just money, my entire identity. Everything I've built, everything I am, it's all based on being a Cole." Amara looked at him steadily. "And Isaiah loses his father. The only father he's ever had a chance to know." "What do you mean? You said you'd go to war with your mother." "But Maxwell, this isn't just about helping Isaiah. This is about choosing between the truth and everything you've ever known. Because once this genetic evidence is public, your mother will be investigated for murder. Cole Industries will be thrown into legal chaos over inheritance disputes. Your engagement to Amanda Worthington will be destroyed. Your entire life will explode." Maxwell looked at his sleeping son, then back at Amara. "I spent 4 years choosing the easy lie over the hard truth. My son is dying because of that choice. I won't make the same mistake twice." He pulled out his phone and made a call. "James, it's Maxwell. I need you to draw up documents immediately." "No, I don't care what time it is. I want to voluntarily submit to a paternity test for a child named Isaiah Bennett. Because he's my son, James, and it's time I stopped hiding from that." After he hung up, Amara asked quietly, "What about your fiancée? Amanda deserves better than a man who's about to become a scandal. I'll end the engagement tomorrow." Maxwell met her eyes. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Amara. I don't deserve it. But I am asking for a chance to be Isaiah's father, even if it's only for—" He couldn't finish the sentence. The thought of Isaiah dying was unbearable. "Let's focus on keeping him alive first," Amara said. "Then we can figure out the rest." Over the next 3 days, Maxwell submitted to genetic testing. The results proved 99% probability of paternity and revealed the Rothmore bloodline marker that could only come from Alexander Rothmore, Victoria's first husband. The news leaked. Media frenzy followed. Cole not actually a Cole. Maxwell Cole's secret son, dying child, exposes scandal. Victoria Cole investigated for murder. Dr. Morrison was reinstated. The district attorney opened an investigation. Cole Industries Board called emergency meetings. Victoria held a defiant press conference. "These accusations are baseless. My first husband died in an accident." These tests are manipulated by opportunists. When asked about Isaiah, she said coldly, "That child is not my grandson." Public opinion turned against her instantly, but public opinion couldn't save Isaiah. He was getting sicker, weaker, and the clock was ticking. Maxwell moved into Amara's apartment, sleeping on the couch, spending every possible moment with Isaiah. He read him stories, played with his dinosaurs, and held his hand during the painful medical procedures. "Why do you keep coming back?" Isaiah asked one day, his voice small and tired. "Mama said my daddy didn't want me." Maxwell's heart shattered. "Your daddy was a fool who didn't know what he was missing, but I'm here now, and I'm never leaving again. Okay?" Isaiah studied him with those two wise eyes. "Are you my daddy?" "Yes," Maxwell said, tears streaming down his face. "Yes, Isaiah, I'm your daddy, and I love you so much." Isaiah smiled, a real, genuine smile that lit up his whole face. "I knew you'd come. Mama said sometimes people get lost, but if you love them, they find their way home." That night, after Isaiah fell asleep, Maxwell held Amara while she finally broke down and cried. 4 years of pain and struggle and fear pouring out. "And I was so angry at you," she sobbed. "I hated you for leaving us, but I'm so glad you're here now, even if we don't have much time." "We're going to have time," Maxwell said fiercely. "I'm getting tested for bone marrow compatibility tomorrow. And if I'm not a match, we'll test every single person who carries Rothmore or Cole genetics. We'll find a donor." But the next day brought devastating news. Maxwell wasn't a compatible match. The genetic markers that proved his paternity also showed immune system incompatibility that made his marrow unsuitable for transplant. Dr. Morrison delivered the news with gentleness, but reality was brutal. "We need to find a blood relative with a closer genetic match. Siblings would be ideal, but failing that, we need cousins, aunts, uncles, anyone with shared genetics." "My mother will never agree to be tested," Maxwell said bitterly. "What about your father?" "James Cole raised you as his son. He and my mother are divorced. They haven't spoken in years, and even if he agreed, he's not genetically related." "What about extended family on the Rothmore side?" That's when it hit them. Alexander Rothmore had had siblings, a brother specifically, who had moved to Europe decades ago. "Dr. Morrison, can you find the family?" Amara asked desperately. "I can try, but international searches take time." "And Isaiah doesn't have time," Maxwell finished grimly. That night, as they sat in the hospital room watching Isaiah sleep, hooked up to machines keeping him alive, Maxwell's phone rang. It was a number he hadn't seen in 3 years. His father. "Dad." "Maxwell." James Cole's voice was rough. "I saw the news. All of it. And I need you to know something. I always suspected you weren't mine biologically. Your mother was pregnant when we met, barely showing, but pregnant. She never confirmed it, but I knew. Then why did you raise me as your son?" "Because I loved your mother, and because I loved you. Blood doesn't make a father, Maxwell. Love does. Showing up does. Being there does." There was a pause. "I failed at a lot of things in my life, but I never regretted claiming you as my son." Maxwell felt tears streaming down his face. "I don't know who I am anymore, Dad. Everything I thought I knew. You're my son. That's who you are. And right now, your son needs you to be strong." James's voice softened. "I saw the photos of Isaiah. He looks like you did at that age. And Maxwell, I would like to meet my grandson, if that's okay." "He's sick, Dad, really sick. I don't know if we're going to be able to save him." "Then let me meet him while we can. Let me be there for both of you." The next day, James Cole walked into Isaiah's hospital room with toys, books, and a lifetime of grandfatherly love waiting to be given. He looked at Isaiah and said simply, "Hello there, young man. I'm your grandfather." Isaiah, weak but curious, asked, "Are you my daddy's daddy?" I am indeed. Then you're my family. I am indeed. Isaiah smiled. Good. We can always use more family. It was a moment of pure sweetness in the midst of crisis, but sweetness didn't cure leukemia. Dr. Morrison had been working frantically to locate Alexander Rothmore's family in Europe. She'd found the brother, Charles Rothmore, now 68 and living in Geneva, but when she called to explain the situation, Charles had shocking news. Alexander isn't dead, Charles said flatly, or at least he wasn't supposed to be. The night of his accident, he called me. Told me Victoria was trying to kill him, that she'd found out he knew about her affair with James Cole, that she was planning something. I told him to go to the police, but he said he needed proof first. Charles's voice broke. I never heard from him again. 3 days later, I was told he died in a car crash. You thought she murdered him. I knew she did, but I couldn't prove it. The investigation was rushed. The body was cremated immediately. Victoria claimed it was what Alexander wanted, and by the time I arrived from Europe, she'd already married James Cole and was pregnant with what everyone assumed was their child. Mr. Rothmore, I need you to understand something. Your great-nephew is dying. He needs a bone marrow transplant, and you might be his only hope. My great-nephew, Doctor. Morrison explained everything. Maxwell, Isaiah, the genetic tests, the time running out. Charles Rothmore was on a plane within hours. Meanwhile, Victoria Cole made her final move. She arrived at the hospital with lawyers, court orders, and a determination to destroy everything. You will not test that child against my family's genetics, she announced. You will not drag the Rothmore name into this circus. And you will certainly not allow some stranger from Europe to claim any connection to my son. Maxwell stepped forward. Mother, you need to stop. Isaiah is dying. Whatever secrets you're trying to protect, whatever lies you've built, none of it matters if my son dies. That child is not your son. He's a bastard trying to steal what's ours. The word hung in the air, ugly, cruel, devastating. Isaiah, awake in his hospital bed, understood enough to know he'd been called something bad. His lip trembled, and he looked at his mother with tears in his eyes. Something in Amara snapped. She stood up, walked right up to Victoria Cole, and spoke in a voice like ice. You want to know what your real fear is? It's not about money. It's not about reputation. It's about control. You murdered your first husband because he discovered your affair. You hid Maxwell's real paternity because it gave you power over him. You forged documents to frame me because I threatened that control. And now you're willing to let your grandson die because admitting he exists means admitting you've been lying for 30 years. How dare you? No! Amara's voice rose. How dare you? You stand there in your designer clothes with your billions of dollars and you look at a dying child, your own flesh and blood, and call him a bastard. You don't deserve the family you have. You don't deserve the love you've been given, and you certainly don't deserve mercy. Security moved to escort Victoria out, but she played her final card. If you proceed with this testing, if you allow Charles Rothmore near my son, I will make one phone call that will shut down this entire hospital. I sit on the board of the Worthington Foundation, which provides 40% of St. Catherine's annual funding. Cross me, and this hospital will lose everything. It was the nuclear option, and everyone in the room knew she was serious. Dr. Morrison looked at her colleagues, at the hospital administrators who'd rushed in, at the impossible choice. Let Isaiah die, or sacrifice the hospital's ability to help thousands of other patients. Before anyone could speak, James Cole stepped forward. Victoria, I've been quiet for too long. Let me be very clear now. I'm prepared to match whatever funding you threaten to pull, dollar for dollar, and then I'm going to use every resource I have to make sure you're prosecuted for fraud, forgery, and murder. You have no proof of murder. Actually, a new voice said from the doorway, he does. Everyone turned to see Charles Rothmore standing there, travel-worn but determined. Alexander recorded a message for me the night he died. He sent it to my lawyer with instructions to deliver it only if something happened to him. I've been holding on to it for 30 years, trying to decide if revenge was worth it. But seeing that little boy in there, knowing he might have a chance to live if I help... Charles turned to Victoria. It's not revenge anymore. It's justice. He held up a small recording device. And my brother's voice, clearly stating that you, Victoria, had discovered he knew about your affair with James Cole, that you'd threatened him, that you'd tampered with his car's brakes. Charles pressed play. Alexander Rothmore's voice, youthful and terrified, filled the room. Charlie, if you're hearing this, she did it. Victoria killed me. I found proof of her affair. Letters, hotel receipts, everything. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She just smiled and said I'd never tell anyone, that the Rothmore fortune would pass to her through me, and she'd already made arrangements to ensure it did. Tell the police. Tell everyone. Don't let her... The recording cut off abruptly. The sound of screeching tires and crashing metal followed. Victoria's face had gone grey. That proves nothing. He was clearly mentally unstable. It proves motive. And combined with the rushed investigation, the immediate cremation, the insurance payout, and your marriage to James Cole within weeks, Charles smiled coldly. It's enough to reopen the case. Especially now that we have DNA evidence proving you lied about Maxwell's paternity. The fight went out of Victoria. She seemed to age 10 years in that moment, her carefully maintained armor cracking to reveal the desperate, murderous woman beneath. And I did what I had to do, she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. Alexander was going to leave me, take everything. I would have been nothing, nobody. I couldn't go back to being nothing. It was a confession, recorded by a dozen phones, witnessed by a room full of people, undeniable. But even as police were called, even as Victoria's world finally collapsed, Isaiah's heart monitor began to beep urgently. He's crashing, Dr. Morrison shouted. Get a team in here now. Maxwell and Amara rushed to Isaiah's bedside as doctors swarmed around him. Charles Rothmore stepped forward. Test me, now, whatever he needs. If I'm a match, take whatever you need. The next 12 hours were a blur. Charles tested positive for compatibility. Emergency surgery was scheduled. Isaiah, barely conscious, squeezed Maxwell's hand and whispered, Daddy, I'm scared. I know, buddy, but you're the bravest person I know. And when you wake up, I'm going to be right here, I promise. It was a promise Maxwell had broken before, but not this time, never again. Isaiah went into surgery with his father, mother, and grandfather waiting outside. Charles Rothmore, who'd never expected to have a great-nephew, much less save his life, sat with them. Alexander would have loved him, Charles said quietly. He always wanted children. Victoria promised him they'd have a family, but she kept putting it off. Now I understand why. She was waiting for James Cole to leave his first wife. The surgery lasted 8 hours. 8 hours of waiting, praying, hoping. Finally, Dr. Morrison emerged, her face exhausted but triumphant. The transplant was successful. Isaiah's stable. It's going to be a long recovery, but... She smiled. He's going to make it. The relief was overwhelming. Amara collapsed into Maxwell's arms, both of them crying. James wrapped them both in a hug, and Charles, this stranger who'd become family, wiped tears from his eyes. But the story wasn't over yet, because in the recovery room, as Isaiah slowly woke up from anesthesia, he looked at the family gathered around his bed and asked the question that would define everything that came next. Are we all together now? Forever? And Maxwell, looking at Amara, at his father, at Charles, realized that family wasn't about blood or money or legacy. It was about showing up. It was about choosing love over fear. It was about building something real, even after everything else burned down. "Yes," he said firmly, "we're together now, forever." 3 months after the surgery, Isaiah was in remission. The transplant had taken beautifully, and while he'd still need years of monitoring, Dr. Morrison was cautiously optimistic about his long-term prognosis. But while Isaiah recovered in body, the world around him had transformed completely. Victoria Cole had been arrested and charged with second-degree murder in Alexander Rothmore's death, along with insurance fraud, forgery, and multiple counts of witness tampering. The trial was set for the following year, and the media coverage was relentless. Every detail of the Cole family's dirty secrets was exposed for public consumption. Maxwell had resigned from Cole Industries. The board, after weeks of legal wrangling, had determined that while he couldn't inherit through the Cole family trust, he was the rightful heir to the Rothmore fortune, or what remained of it after his mother's schemes. It wasn't billions, but it was enough. More importantly, Maxwell had moved into a modest apartment near Amara's place. Not with her, they weren't there yet. Maybe would never be there. But close enough to be present for Isaiah every single day. "You don't have to do this," Amara had told him when he first suggested it. "Just because you're Isaiah's father doesn't mean you owe me anything. I'm not doing it because I owe you. I'm doing it because I want to be the father Isaiah deserves. And maybe, if you'll let me, I want the chance to show you who I really am. Not the man my mother raised, but the man I choose to be." Now, sitting in Dr. Morrison's office for Isaiah's 3-month checkup, they were a strange but functional family unit. Maxwell, Amara, Isaiah, James, who'd become a devoted grandfather, and sometimes Charles, who video-called from Geneva to check on his great-nephew. "All his numbers look great," Dr. Morrison said, beaming. "And Isaiah, you're a medical miracle." "I'm a superhero," Isaiah corrected seriously, "because I have superhero blood now." "From Uncle Charlie," everyone laughed. Isaiah had taken to calling Charles Rothmore Uncle Charlie, and the older man had embraced the nickname with touching enthusiasm. "Dr. Morrison," Maxwell said carefully, "we wanted to talk to you about something. Amara and I have been discussing it, and—" he looked at Amara, who nodded encouragingly. "We want to create a foundation to help other families like ours. Single mothers fighting for their children's health care, kids who need transplants but can't afford the medical bills, people taking on powerful families who try to bury the truth. The Isaiah Bennett Foundation," Amara added, "because our son's story, our story, shouldn't have to happen to anyone else. No child should be called a liar. No mother should have to fight alone." "Doctor." Morrison's eyes filled with tears. "That's beautiful, and I'd be honored to serve on the medical advisory board, if you'll have me." "We were hoping you'd say that." As they left the hospital that day, Isaiah walking between his parents and holding both their hands, they made an unusual picture. But Amara had learned that family came in all forms. What mattered wasn't the traditional structure, but the love that held it together. "Daddy," Isaiah asked as they walked, "are you going to marry Mama?" Both adults froze. It was a question they'd carefully avoided discussing in front of Isaiah. "Buddy, that's complicated," Maxwell started. "Why is it complicated? You love Mama, right? And Mama loves you. I can tell." Amara's breath caught. She hadn't said those words, hadn't let herself feel them, but Isaiah's childish certainty made her realize the truth. She did still love Maxwell. Or maybe she loved the man he was becoming, the father he'd chosen to be. "Isaiah, your daddy and I hurt each other very badly," Amara said gently. "Sometimes, even when people love each other, they need time to heal before they can be together." "How much time?" Maxwell laughed, a sound of genuine joy that Amara hadn't heard in years. How about we start with dinner, all of us together, and we'll figure out the rest as we go. Can Grandpa James come too? And Uncle Charlie on the video? Of course. That night, gathered around Amara's small kitchen table with take-out Chinese food and Charles Rothmore on a laptop screen from Geneva, they were more than a family. They were a testament to survival, to truth, to the possibility of redemption, but there was still one piece of unfinished business. The next day, Maxwell visited his mother in jail. It was the first time he'd seen Victoria since her arrest, and he was shocked by her appearance. The immaculate hair was dull, the designer clothes replaced by prison orange, the Ice Queen demeanor shattered into something smaller, older, more human. "Maxwell," her voice cracked, "you came. I came to ask you one question. Just one. And I need you to tell me the truth for once in your life." "What question? Did you ever love me? Really love me? Or was I just a tool, a way to secure the Cole fortune?" Victoria was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, tears ran down her face, the first genuine emotion Maxwell had ever seen from her. "I loved you so much it terrified me. You were supposed to be Alexander's son, my ticket to his fortune, but when you were born and I looked at you," she sobbed, "you were mine, not his, not James's, mine. And I was so afraid of losing you, of losing everything I'd built, that I destroyed anyone who threatened us. I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was being a good mother. You murdered my biological father. You drove away the woman I loved. You called your own grandson a bastard. That's not protection, Mother. That's not love. I know. God help me. I know. I became a monster trying to protect you from becoming nothing, like I was nothing before I married your father." Victoria reached toward the glass, separating them. "Maxwell, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know. Everything I did, every terrible thing, I did it because I loved you. I just didn't know how to love without destroying." Maxwell stood to leave, then turned back. "I have a son now, and I'm learning what real love looks like. It's not control, it's not manipulation, it's showing up even when it's hard. It's choosing truth, even when lies are easier. It's letting the people you love be free, even if it means they might leave you. Is my grandson going to be okay?" It was the first time Victoria had called Isaiah her grandson. "He's going to be fine, no thanks to you. Will you ever bring him to see me?" Maxwell considered. "I don't know. Maybe someday, when he's old enough to understand. But Mother, if he does visit you, it won't be because you're entitled to his presence. It'll be because I want him to see that even people who do terrible things are still human, that everyone has a story that explains, if not excuses, who they became. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something, an acknowledgement that even monsters were once human." Over the following months, as Victoria's trial proceeded and the media circus continued, Maxwell, Amara, and Isaiah built something new together. Not the fairy tale romance Amara had dreamed of at 20, not the perfect family Maxwell had been raised to expect, but something real and messy and theirs. They had family dinners every week. Maxwell taught Isaiah to ride a bike. Amara finally allowed herself to believe that Maxwell wouldn't disappear again. James became the grandfather who showed up to every school event, and Charles visited from Geneva, bringing stories of Alexander Rothmore, the good man Isaiah's biological grandfather had been. 6 months after the transplant, on Isaiah's 5th birthday, Maxwell did something he'd been planning for weeks. At the party, surrounded by the few friends Amara had managed to keep through the hardest years, by Dr. Morrison and her family, by James and Charles and the unlikely family they'd all become, he knelt down in front of Amara. "I'm not asking you to marry me," he said clearly. "Not yet, because I haven't earned that right. But I am asking you to let me spend the rest of my life proving that I'm the man you thought I was, the man I want to be. For you, for Isaiah, for us. Amara looked at this man who'd broken her heart, who'd found his way back, who'd fought his entire family for the chance to be a father. "Ask me again in a year," she said with a smile. "And if you're still showing up every day, if you're still choosing us over everything else, ask me again and I'll say yes." Isaiah, covered in birthday cake and pure joy, jumped between them. "Does that mean we're going to be a family? Like official?" "We already are a family," Amara said, pulling her son close. "We've always been a family. We're just figuring out what that looks like." "I like what it looks like," Isaiah decided. "Can Uncle Charlie come visit more often?" "I'm sure we can arrange that." Later that night, after the party ended and Isaiah finally crashed from his sugar high, Amara and Maxwell sat on her apartment's small balcony, looking out at the city lights. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd been braver 4 years ago?" Maxwell asked. "If I'd stood up to my mother, if I'd fought for us?" "Every day," Amara admitted. "But I also wonder if we needed these 4 years. If you needed to lose everything to figure out what really mattered. If I needed to prove I could survive alone before I could trust someone to be my partner. I hate that Isaiah had to suffer for my cowardice. Isaiah is alive because a lot of people made difficult choices. Dr. Morrison risked her career. Charles came forward with evidence after 30 years. You chose to fight your mother. And yes, we wish it hadn't taken a crisis. But maybe that's how transformation works. It takes breaking apart before you can rebuild into something stronger." Maxwell took her hand. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret giving me this second chance." "Just show up," Amara said simply. "That's all I need. Just keep showing up." And he did. Every single day, through Isaiah's continued treatment, through Victoria's eventual conviction and sentencing to 25 years in prison, through the media attention that eventually faded, through the ordinary and extraordinary moments of building a life together, Maxwell showed up. 1 year later, on the anniversary of Isaiah's transplant, Maxwell asked his question again. This time, Amara said yes. They married in a small ceremony at the hospital chapel, where Isaiah had fought for his life, with Dr. Morrison as a witness, James and Charles beside them, and Isaiah as the ring-bearer, proudly carrying a pillow that held 2 simple gold bands. "I'm going to give a speech," Isaiah announced seriously before the ceremony started. The adults exchanged amused glances. "Okay, buddy. What's your speech?" Isaiah stood on a chair so everyone could see him and said with perfect 5-year-old solemnity, "My mama is the strongest person ever. She took care of me when I was sick and scared. My daddy learned how to be brave, and now we're all together, and that means love is stronger than being scared. The end." There wasn't a dry eye in the chapel. The ceremony was simple, the vows honest. Maxwell promised to choose Amara every day. Amara promised to trust him with her heart, and Isaiah, when asked if he had anything to add, said loudly, "You both promised to give me a little brother or sister, right?" Everyone laughed through their tears. After the ceremony, as they walked out into the sunshine together, Amara realized something profound. This wasn't a fairy tale ending. Fairy tales were about perfect people in perfect circumstances. This was something better. It was a messy, complicated, beautifully imperfect story about real people who'd survived real pain and chosen to build something real together. They'd been broken. They'd been betrayed. They'd been called liars and worse. But they'd also been brave. They'd told the truth even when it cost them everything. They'd fought for justice even when the odds were impossible. And in the end, they'd won something more valuable than any coal fortune. They'd won each other. Dr. Morrison, watching the new family walk away, felt a profound sense of satisfaction. In 30 years of medicine, she'd seen countless cases, solved countless medical mysteries, saved countless lives. But this case, this family, would stay with her forever. Because sometimes the most important thing a doctor can do isn't cure a disease. It's help people find the truth. And the truth, no matter how painful, is what sets us free. 5 years later, the Isaiah Bennett Foundation had helped over 300 families. Amara ran operations. Maxwell provided legal support. Isaiah, now 10 and cancer-free, was thriving with his adopted sister Maya, age 6. Victoria was released from prison with terminal cancer. The family visited her together. "My grandson," Victoria whispered at Isaiah. "You're so tall." Isaiah handed her flowers. "Hi, Grandma Victoria." Victoria wept. "I'm so sorry. I was so afraid of being nothing that I destroyed everyone." Amara felt only pity. "You were never nothing. Fear made you do terrible things. Can you forgive me?" "Forgiveness isn't forgetting," Amara said. "But yes, holding anger only hurts me." Maxwell held his mother's hand. "I'm not the heir you wanted. I'm just a man trying to be good." "You're more than I deserved," Victoria whispered. Over 3 months, Victoria recorded testimony for her grandchildren, apologizing publicly. Her last words, "Isaiah, Maya, be braver than I was. Choose love over fear, always." At her memorial, Charles Rothmore eulogized, "She was shaped by her era, by fear. That doesn't excuse her actions, but explains them. In the end, she acknowledged her wrongs. That's not redemption, but it's not nothing." The family gathered after the service. James played with grandchildren. Charles taught Isaiah about history. Maxwell and Amara watched from their porch. "Do you regret the lost years?" Maxwell asked. "I regret Isaiah's suffering, but I don't regret who I became, strong enough to choose you from strength, not need." Years passed. Isaiah grew into a remarkable young man, entering medical school to become a pediatric oncologist. Maya studied social work. The foundation thrived, helping thousands. On Isaiah's 20th transplant anniversary, the family celebrated. Isaiah, now 24, raised a glass. 20 years ago, I almost died, but my mother refused to give up. My father learned bravery, and we proved family is what we make it." He looked at his parents. "You can't choose what happens to you, but you can choose what you do with it. You turned pain into purpose. You chose love when it was hard." "To choosing love," Maxwell added. "To choosing truth," Amara continued. "To showing up every single day." They finished together, their family motto. Later, Maxwell and Amara stood on their porch. "The moment I knew I could trust you," Amara said. 6 months in, you were singing to Isaiah during a nightmare. No one watching, no credit, just there because he needed you. Thank you for the chance to become someone trustworthy." They returned inside to laughter and family chaos. Their story wasn't perfect. It was messy, born from pain, but it was real. Isaiah became a healer. Maxwell became a devoted father. Amara became the heart-proving love overcomes anything. Not a fairy tale, something better. A true story proving real people, in real pain with real flaws, can still choose to become heroes. The lesson? You choose who you become, not your parents, not your past. You choose wisely, choose bravely, choose love, and show up. Every single day. The end.